Hey, real quick, for the month of December, I'm raising money with the Bungie Foundation for charity. By donating through my link, the first one in the description, you can get all the cosmetics you see here on screen added to your account, plus the money goes to a good cause. I'm trying to raise $5,000 before the end of the year for those in need, so thank you so much and enjoy the video. Good morning everyone and merry weekend. I hope you all have been enjoying the new dungeon that just dropped a few days ago, Spire of the Watcher, and while I will be having a guide out on that activity's loot, unfortunately that is not today. The weapon perks aren't available in the API yet, so take a Dungeon God Roll Guide waiting room ticket and sit down because today we'll be discussing the seasonal weapons instead. Ladies and gentlemen, today is all about the Seraphic weapon set. We'll be going through all these weapons one by one, talking about how to get them, and of course what their best perks are for PvE here in Destiny 2. If you're a fan of weapon reviews, loot guides, challenge runs, and anything just under the sun PvE related for D2, feel free to hit that subscribe button and let's jump into this. First up, how do we farm Seraphic weapons? Well, it's actually quite simple. These weapons, in a loot pool alongside the seasonal armor, will drop from the Seraph chest inside of Heist Battlegrounds for 500 Seraph key codes. Now to get these Seraph key codes, the game claims that the fastest way to get them is by doing core playlist activities, but the actual fastest way is just to farm the final boss checkpoint in the Shattered Throne encounter with some buddies by holding a checkpoint on one character and loading in over and over, killing the boss for around 100 plus every few minutes. Now that said, although this is the fastest method, I actually don't recommend it. If you guys have watched my last video, which my god, thank you all so much for the support on that one, you'd know that Vanguard Strikes are currently dropping one of the best SMGs in the game. My recommendation is just run Vanguard Strikes in order to get these Seraph key codes because while not the fastest, you'll also be getting drops of that new SMG and ranking up your Vanguard at the same time as acquiring the key codes. Now whenever you get 500 of these, you of course can go to the end chest of the Heist Battlegrounds and have a random chance to get either armor or a Seraphic weapon. Now alongside this drop, whether armor or weapon, you'll also get Seraphic Umbral Energy, which can be used at the helm to focus farm the specific weapon you're going for. And just like with all seasonal weapons as of late, you'll want to be on the lookout of red borders as these guns are craftable. Now with that said, let's get into the weapons and what you need to know about them. Firstly, we probably should talk about a perk that comes on every last one of these guns, and that is the origin trait. This one is called Ambush, and what it says is it'll improve your range, handling, and damage against combatants during the opening moments of an engagement. Essentially, it's like Reverse Frenzy, but with a much shorter time. You'll be dealing more damage for the first few seconds of shooting an enemy or getting shot at until the buff goes away until the fighting stops and then comes back for the next fight. I tested the damage numbers here with the glaive, and you get just under an 11% damage increase when Ambush is active, which isn't anything super crazy considering it doesn't last long, but it's better than nothing, I suppose. Now do keep in mind that some of these weapons, like the glaive for example, are part of weapon foundries like 𝗁𝗂 in this instance, and can have their origin trait swapped if that's something that you'd like to do. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's jump into the first weapon of the set for the video and talk about what I believe is the first legendary to have the aggressive glaive archetype, the Judgment of Kelgorath. Now, before we get into the perks and whatnot, let's talk about this archetype because I'm sure you guys do have some questions. The description reads, hard-hitting, slow melee/ranged polearm with a shield. Now, in my testing, I didn't really notice any difference with the swing speed as it seems to be fairly identical, but the rate of fire did see a slight drop off with the new archetype, although not enough for me to even care about its change to begin with. I also tested the damage numbers, making sure that the ambush origin trait wasn't active on the aggressive glaive, and while the melee damage is seemingly the same, the ranged attack damage on the aggressive frame is only about a 3.5% difference when compared to an adaptive, meaning that from just a pure DPS standpoint of standing and firing the glaive over and over again, the adaptive would be better because of the rate of fire, but that's not exactly how you're supposed to use these glaives, as they're much more rhythmic and methodical than that, so I would say that an aggressive frame might be better overall, but not by much. Now, taking a look at the perks, this is where things get super interesting for the Judgment of Kelgorath, as that is where all the brownie points will be scored, with this glaive just having a phenomenal selection to choose from. Taking a look at the first column, we have bangers such as Overflow, Demolitionist, as well as Pugilist, with the final column featuring Surrounded, which is really good once you get it enhanced, Incandescent, which will give this glaive a layer of ad clear, Close to Melee, which makes ranged final blows increase the damage of your glaive melee damage, which is just massive, and I feel like we've been waiting for something like this for a while ever since glaives got introduced. And finally, we have the perk Unstoppable Force, which is also good. This perk selection is just out of this world, and my god, can I not wait to craft this bad boy when I get 5 out of 5 red borders. So many people even to this day sleep on glaives, which makes me sad as they're really fantastic weapons, and this is by far one of the best ones out there that I could recommend for anyone trying to get into the weapon type. Moving on from our stabby boy, let's talk about the seasonal pulse rifle for the weapon set, Disparity. For all my homies that have just not been able to get a good roll on the Garden of Salvation pulse, stop worrying about it because an even better pulse rifle has arrived to take its place. Finally, we've gotten another aggressive burst. This time it's in the kinetic slot, and it just blows Sacred Provenance out of the water. Not only does it have the stasis synergy that I so love, but its perks are just that much better and more varied. Taking a look here in the first column, we got Outlaw, Rapid Hit, and Pugilist, with the second column featuring Frenzy, Headstone, One for All, Swash to pair with Pugilist, Kill Clip, and even Desperado, which sounds nuts on a 4-burst pulse rifle. My recommendations are definitely Outlaw Headstone, Pugilist Swash, Rapid Hit Frenzy, and Outlaw Desperado, with that last one being the god roll that I personally will be crafting at the Enclave later this season. In my opinion, this is probably one of, if not the best legendary kinetic slot pulse in the game, so I definitely wouldn't miss out on it if you're a fan of burst fire weapons. Now moving on, let's jump into a weapon that, while not super meta, would definitely be one I probably craft for the sheer fun alone, and that's the Path of Least Resistance. More and more often am I seeing people in the community rock double special weapons and activities, and most of the time I'm seeing them utilize a trace rifle as taking the spot of what their primary normally would be. This is due to the recent damage buffs plus the ammo economy changes that trace rifles got, where they just get a metric ton of ammo upon picking up special ammo bricks. And this is fantastic considering we've been wanting a reason to throw on a legendary trace rifle for quite a long time. Now, the Path of Least Resistance for those looking to get into the trace rifle lifestyle is a hell of a pick that I'd say is most definitely worth your time. Taking a look at the perks for the final column, we have Shoot to Loot, Subsistence, Triple Tap, which just seems busted, as well as Stats for All and even Adaptive Munitions for master content. In the second column, we have Volt Shot for Ad Clear, Dragonfly, which just got a buff this season with it being merged with Dragonfly Spec, as well as One for All for just pure weapon damage. Definitely a lot to love here, and it seems like the perfect trace to pick up if your goal is to have more means of ad clear thanks to Volt as well as Dragonfly. And hell, combining Dragonfly with Shoot to Loot could mean never needing to worry about manually picking up ammo again, as those Dragonfly explosions can just do that for you. Really cool weapon right here, and although it's nothing that's going to revolutionize the meta, I'd probably end up crafting one just because it seems like a lot of fun. Up next, I want to move on to something that's more on the side of shaking up the meta, so let's talk about a weapon that's definitely been the talk of the town, and that is the Fire and Forget Burst Fire Linear. Now, this weapon is basically what you'd get if you took Storm Chaser and Reeds and they had a baby. You're essentially taking the stasis damage and the Vice Stinger of Reeds and combining it with the archetype of Storm Chaser and getting this. Now, this weapon already sounds pretty damn good, but let's take a look at the perks. In the first column, we have Field Prep, which is pretty much the only perk you'll need. This is going to net you more reserve ammo plus max reload speed when crouching, with the second column having Frenzy, Focus Fury, and even Chill Clip for things like champions. Now, while this all looks great, this linear does have two dirty little secrets, one of which good and one of which bad. The good secret is that this weapon has been manufactured by Vice, meaning it has the Vice Stinger origin trait. This means that because it shoots 3 times per burst, someone did the math, and I believe it's around an 80% chance that you will not have to reload your mag, as the origin trait would just have that much of a higher chance at proccing because of those extra shots. And this is just insane to ensure that you have no downtime whatsoever with reloading during a DPS phase. Now, the bad secret, however, is the stability on this weapon, because holy shit, it is absolutely awful to try to fire at anything when it doesn't have either a div bubble or the crit spot isn't massive. This weapon just jumps around all over the place, where a Storm Chaser barely even moved. That said, if you can keep this weapon under control with the perks that it has, and the origin trait and the uptime and the stasis energy and everything like that, this gun is a top option in the linear hierarchy and definitely one that you should craft. It's a meta pick for sure, and I'd make sure not to miss out on it. Moving on, let's talk about a combat bow that would just not drop for me, so I used wolf tone draw gameplay instead. Here we have the Tripwire Canary. Combat bows are a weapon type that just don't change all that much outside of element when it comes to putting them all together in comparison. Most of the time, you're just going to find yourself rocking Archer's Tempo Explosive Head on just about any bow you run, and that's about it. And while that combo does exist on this bow if you'd like it, we do have some extra variety which does separate it from the rest. Taking a look at the perks, this arc bow brings with it an explosive touch by allowing you to roll with both Dragonfly in the first column and Archer's Tempo in the second. Explode on both all your precision kills and shots in general with this bow. We also have Archer's Tempo in that first column if you'd rather that, with Frenzy in the final if that's your thing. Gonna be honest though, the true play here might be going with Dragonfly Frenzy in the end, as Explosive Head as a perk, while nice, has a delay to every explosion, meaning sometimes you won't be getting the kill with a headshot, rather the explosion of the Explosive Head perk, which happens after the initial hit, which could completely negate Dragonfly. That said, Frenzy, while taking a little bit to activate, will give you more damage on top of not messing with your Dragonfly perk, so that's definitely the combo that I personally will be crafting. And finally, coming to the end of our beloved Season 19 weapon set review, here for the final gun of the video, we have the Retrofit 𝗍𝗑𝗍 machine gun. This machine gun, I'll just be honest, isn't anything I'm that excited about because it's a rapid fire frame. However, it unironically is a machine gun that can be turned into a very nasty DPS weapon with the right roll. Taking a look at the perks, we have Feeding Frenzy, Field Prep, Stats for All, and 4th Times in the first column, with the second featuring Frenzy, Rampage, Tricorn, 1 for All, and Target Lock. Do you see the roll I'm talking about yet? Well, that's going to be 4th Times and Target Lock. While the other perks are very nice and will serve you well, Retrofit 𝗍𝗑𝗍𝗏 is the only machine gun that would give you quite the unique interaction that those two perks have together, and I'd say that 100% warrants giving it a craft. The damage output of that combo sounds just absolutely insane, and even though I really hate rapid fire frames, I will put aside my hatred just this once because of those two perks being able to live together in harmony. But guys, that is going to do it for me today in this video. We went through all 6 of the new seasonal weapons here in Season of the Seraph, talked about their origin trait, reviewed them one by one, and discussed what made them special and why or why not you might want them. Let me know what your favorite of the 6 is in the comments down below and what roles you plan on chasing before the season is over. With all that said, I want to thank you all so much for watching and to give some special thanks to not only those that watched all the way through to the end of the video, but also to my Patreon supporters and YouTube members. For Patreon, shout out to Admis, Vile, John, Noel, Serenity, and BoomerNoob in Tier 2, as well as Austin, Cinco, and Glumia in Tier 3, as well as my Tier 2 YouTube members Billy, Bluesman, Clear, Brian, Angel, Ben McClellan, Hank the Tank, Mayhem Gaming, Peak, and Serenity once more. With that said, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.